Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I do appreciate that. I also love when people leave comments, so if you have a comment or a suggestion, in this case I'm doing kind of an advice video, so if you have some input to the issue, I'd love to hear it. I love learning new things from other people, so share the kind of information that you have in the comments about the topic that we're talking about. I like ideas for videos. I like if you just want to tell me how you do things, that's always nice. But either way, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. So I was sitting here working on a video a couple of days ago, and I was filing something, and I had a lot of filing to do on it, and I thought, you know what, I did a video on filing about 3 years ago, and it was probably pretty minimal. But I've learned a lot of things about filing over the past 3-4 years, and I wanted to make sure that I shared those ideas with you as well. Some of them have made my life a lot easier, and I think, or at least hopefully, you'll find that to be the same way too. So I thought I would go over some filing tips that I've come across or figured out on my journey here. And so I'm going to talk about some different things about filing, including types of files I use, as well as some strategies I use when using them. So yeah, I hope it's a useful video for you. But before we get started, I wanted to make sure to thank some people. I have a group over on Patreon who is my core group of supporters, and I find them to be a marvelous group of people with lots of fresh ideas and friendly attitudes, and I really love interacting with them over there. And I want to thank them for creating such a cool environment, as well as for the financial support that they provide for me. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and amazingly, we just passed 20,000. We're actually at 20,200 now, I think, somewhere thereabouts. That is amazing, and I wanted to thank you all for that. So I put all of my merch, including my ebooks, at 10% off for the next week on my Fourth Wall store. There's several ways to get to it. I'll put a link in the video. The other way to get to it is if you go to the video description down below, there's a link to it there. If you click on the shop tab, that takes you to my Fourth Wall store as well. So there's a code to use. I'll put the code up here for you. And it's good for the next week or so. So get yourself a notebook or an ebook. Those things are great and useful tools. So that's one way I wanted to thank you, but the other way I want to thank you is just personally, I appreciate the really nice comments. I get some really touching comments from people that make me feel like I'm doing something good here. So thanks for that. That makes it easier. I also do appreciate the kind contributions like the Buy Me a Coffees and the Super Thanks. So thanks for that. It helps a lot with the cost of materials. All right, well, let's talk about some files. These are a couple of my design idea sketchbooks. I have these in my merch store if you're interested. Like I said, there's a little sale this week if you're watching this right after I released it. But I like them because they're useful for drawing up your projects so you can keep a record of what you did and how you did it in case you want to revisit those things at a future time. They also have this nice grid pattern in the background, so it helps me to draw things more symmetrically because that's not one of my strongest suits. There's a bunch of different designs. The more recent ones, I started putting charts on the back that are useful. This one has fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters, which I use that one all the time. And I just filled this book up, so I might have to order myself another one of those. But I'll keep this around so I can still use that guide. This one has American wire gauge to inches to millimeters, which a lot of people overseas tell me is useful. So that's the one I broke open for my newest projects. And today we're not doing a project so much as talking about files. So one of the things that when I first started the channel, I had several people give me a little bit of flack about the way that I file. And one of the things that people gave me some hard time for at the beginning was the way that I air file. Okay, so there's two things here that I should address. One, I don't always air file. I usually do when I'm doing a video so that you can see what I'm filing. The other thing is, I mostly was taught to file that way when I first started in the 1990s. And so I got to where I could get a pretty straight, flat edge just by doing it like this, just because I filed so many times like this. This, however, is not the only way that I file. And just because I'm doing it mostly to show you what's going on in front of the camera here, that doesn't mean every situation is correct for it. The other thing about air filing is sometimes I'm more sculpting with the file than trying to get a straight edge like that. Say I wanted to taper this piece of half-round wire down into more of a tentacle-y shape or something. I'm going to be doing some, random placement of this to get it to kind of round in the way that I'm going. So I'm basically sculpting with the file. And that kind of a situation, I think it's totally appropriate to file out in the air like this. Okay? So a lot of times, if I really need to brace in front of the camera here, I'll use my bench block. And if I need to file an angle or something, I can brace this against there and get a pretty even flat surface to follow. So that works for me. A lot of people use their bench pin. My bench pin is behind me on this other counter that I have as a secondary workbench. And so whenever I have to file something, I don't get up and take the camera over there and do it over there because it's too much of a pain. So it's my laziness that causes that mostly. But yeah, when I do need to brace stuff, I brace it. And that is appropriate as well in certain situations. So we got air filing, we got braced filing. There's another one that has to do with brace filing, but I made a separate category just for it. It's miter vice jig, and we'll get to that in a bit. But first I want to talk about some different kinds of files that I use. I get asked about my files quite a bit, and primarily two files that I use all the time. And one of the things that I would suggest is indulge in a new file periodically, because they do get dull, and as far as I know, there's no easy way to sharpen files. Once they're dull, they're dull. But if anybody can contradict that information for me and tell me about a way that they sharpen them, I've always been curious about that. So leave a comment if you have an idea about that. So a lot of people have also commented that I do things in a way that you don't have to break the bank when you're getting set up with tools. And this is one of those things. You can get a reasonably decent half-round jeweler's file out of one of those multi-jeweler file kits, and that'll work just fine for a while. It might not have the nicest edge on it, but it will get into small nooks and crannies and get into places that you can't get with a bigger file. So those are a reasonably cheap way to get one of these. I would suggest getting a little better one from a jewelry supply company. This one is a Swiss one, and it's a number 2, I think, which has to do with how coarse the file is. The primary file that I do most of the work with, that I use all the time, is just a single cut bastard mill file. And this is a Nicholson that I got at the hardware store, and I think I paid about $8 for it. This is an 8-inch one, I think. You can get 6-inch ones or even bigger ones than that, but it produces a pretty nice clean edge, as you saw when I was doing this, when I was filing this earlier. So not bad for a hardware store file. Recently I was given this really nice file by Flying Chef, who's someone who follows me on YouTube and comments pretty frequently. She has a great deal of jewelry knowledge and has kindly shared it with me and sent me a few gifts over the past few years, one of which was this file, which is it's a Swiss file, and it's actually a double cut, which surprised me because it cuts really nice. And double cuts, single cut means it only cuts in one direction like this. You have to push it away from you to get it to cut. This one you can go back and forth, which I wouldn't generally recommend, but it does. This particular one does produce a nice one, a nice edge. So one thing about it that I like. Oh, by the way, the brand is what is the brand? Garden Valorbe, I think is the brand name. Valorbe, Valorbe. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it is a nice file, and I have used it so much that I've kind of dulled this one and have gotten around to buying a new one. But One of the features on this particular one is it has a flat edge on this side, so you have a safe edge. So if you're filing a surface over here, but you don't want to scratch up anything over there, and you know, things happen, sometimes your hand slips or whatever, and that will kind of protect that side if you have a need for that, and that's useful. So that's one thing that your store-bought kind of files don't generally have. So, but either way, I've done tons of jewelry with just a single cut bastard file and a jeweler's file that's a half round one. The half round one is important because it's got a nice flat surface. It's got this sharp corner that you can get into and really tighten up corners and stuff. And then it's got a nice little rounded surface. So it's got almost everything you could possibly need. That's not to say it's not sometimes useful to have some of these other ones. I bought a general set of kind of cheapy ones. And this is a flat kind of rectangular profile one, and it's, you know, you get what you pay for, but it's useful in some situations. It actually files pretty good. It came with one of these kind of round ones. It looks like a rat tail file, and those are, you know, for cleaning out holes and stuff. That's sometimes nice. So those are useful to have around as well. So I would say, you know, single cut bastard file is a cheap way to get into it. If you want to get a little nicer file, order a nice Swiss one from a jewelry supply company. Half-round jeweler's files, preferably get a nice one if you can. I think they're probably $12 or $13 now for something like this. But you can also get one of those full sets of different cheap ones for about the same price, probably, you know, at a place like Harbor Freight or something. Oh, and finally, I didn't mention this because I don't use them very often. They do make diamond jewelers files in those sets like that with different shapes as well. You know, the set that I bought a long time ago, I didn't have a huge amount of success with it. It was mostly like badly made sandpaper, kind of. And so I quickly stopped using them and started using regular files in place of those. So I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong if you've had better luck with those. I haven't, and I found that regular files work better for me. So, all right. Something else to talk about that I didn't know about when I started doing this, and I probably have talked about this a little in a few videos, but this little device is called a miter vise jig, and when you look at it, you're like, what is that for? But what it's really for is to cut really precise surfaces on pieces of wire or sheet. And so the particular kind that I have here only has two different angles you can do. It's got, if you'll see right here, it's got a straight line here like that, and then it's got a 45-degree line like that, and that's because there's a cut there. And you can open it up and slide things in at that angle like that. Or you got this 90-degree one like that. So the reason it's useful for, especially for beginners if they don't have a lot of experience filing, one of my things in my beginner classes, we always did just kind of a simple band as part of the beginning class, and getting the two edges perfectly flat is sometimes aggressively intimidating to beginners for some reason. It's just hard to control a file because it has a tendency to shift in your hand, and people's strokes are kind of follow a natural pattern that isn't necessarily straight. So what you can do with these then is it's a cheat to get a nice straight edge. So you just stick it through there so it's sticking out a little bit, and then you just file along the surface here. So when you get that out of there, you have a really nice flat 90-degree surface. Same way with the 45 part here. you could just, it's got a couple of different spots here. If you're using a piece of round tubing or something, it works really good in this spot where you've got that kind of diamond shape. And there's a little bit smaller one, very much the same. If you're using square wire, small gauge square wire, it works great in there. If you're using something like this, sometimes you can just butt it up against the edge of that square wire thing. Like that. Tighten it down. Make sure it's straight along there. Make sure it's really nice and tight. Hopefully you can see that. It's got a nice 45-degree angle now, really straight and clean. So they also make versions that have a 60-30 angle, and I should have held out and gotten that one because I was cheaping out on this one, but eventually I'll get one of those, I think, because I think that would be useful as well. Super handy when you're making little kind of framework kind of things, or things that need right angles. So yeah, get yourself one of those if you have trouble filing a straight edge. You can also use them with a saw if you want to. Just put it through there and then run your saw right along there. I'm better at filing than sawing, so I usually just use the file with them. Some concerns people have asked about me before as far as rubbing your files on this. I haven't noticed any kind of increased dulling of the file or anything like that, so I don't think it's significant enough to worry too much. You know, if you know otherwise, let me know in the comments. But definitely a useful tool. Okay. So this is not exactly filing, but relevant to filing, because there are times when I have a lot of material to remove, and I don't want to spend the time just manually filing it, or my hands are in rough shape, and I just don't think I have the strength to do it for that long. And so there are other power tools you can use. Like I have, and don't shame me for this, but I've used my belt sander before to remove a lot of material really quickly. And it's usually only when I have to remove a lot of materials, so I wouldn't recommend that all the time. But they do make those little belt sanders that are kind of small and vertical, and I can see how that would be really useful sometimes, and it would be easier to reclaim the dust from that than it would on your big belt sander. So, but on a smaller scale, your rotary tool can use these kind of bits as well, which are sanding bits. And sanding is much like filing in that it's removing material relatively quickly, and so that's a way you can remove material quickly if you don't feel like filing. So there's nothing wrong with that. These are pretty cheap to replace, but you do lose a bit of precision when you're using a power tool, so you need to keep that in mind as well. I use these a lot when I'm removing material. These are silicone abrasive wheels, and the white ones have the most coarse abrasive, and they're color coded in various grits, and I don't remember what the grit is on this, but these are the coarsest ones. And they will remove material pretty well and pretty quickly as well. So I run through a lot of these things because they wear out. As they get used up, they get flatter and flatter like this. I like the knife edge ones because they start out with a nice sharp edge you can use in various places. But as they get worn down, then if you need to kind of sand down flatter spaces, you can get rid of file marks pretty well with those. All right, a few tips about filing, and I wanted to talk about these things, okay? Because I have problems with my hands a lot. And sometimes if I've been doing a lot of metalsmithing, my skin is just beat up and sort of thin, and it breaks open pretty easily. And so when I'm doing a lot of precise filing or something, I hold the piece with my bare fingers. I hit it with the file a lot, and since my skin is already kind of fragile, I tend to break it open and bleed a lot. And so these kind of things not only protect your fingers, they also give you a nice grip on things too, because they have kind of this abrasive surface there. But they're rubber, so they kind of really hold on to things pretty well. So I like those a lot, and those have saved my fingers a lot ever since Pepe Tools sent them to me. So I'm going to put a link up here for you if you want to get some of those, because I think those are, I would say it's one of the top things I've discovered over the recent couple of years as far as ways to improve my process, just because it helps protect my fingers and when they're kind of in rough shape. So I think those are great. They come in different sizes too. I have a bag of these that are bigger too, but I don't know where I put it, so I just have the small ones right here. But they last quite a while before you wear through them. I'm not sure how they did that, but they're pretty tough. So one of the things that I sort of, when I started doing the YouTube channel, I didn't admit to this because for some reason I had some sort of shame around it. I don't know why, but there are times when you have a small piece of something that it's just really too hard to hold on to, but you want to file a surface flat on it. And I'm going to use this little dome that was a prototype for something I was making the other day. If you want to get a nice flat bottom on it, it makes sense to keep it even, to run it on an abrasive surface like this. And one of the things you'll find when you do this is to get it started is hard, because it tries to catch on all of the blades. So again, putting something rubbery on your finger, and I've also used masking tape with the sticky side away from my finger so I can kind of stick it to this. That's another way you can do it. But to get it started, use a light touch, and then you can start it going like that. Once it smooths out a little bit, it'll be less catchy. And then you can file it as far down as you want it to. If you have one of these nice double cuts, you can go back and forth like that. That's always handy. And I've been told by multiple people that a great way to do things too, and I have not yet done this, that they tape down a piece of sandpaper on their workspace, or a couple of different kinds of sandpaper. That way they can just put something on it and run it back and forth on that. This is really coarse sandpaper, so it's going to kind of chatter on that. But if you used some fine sandpaper, like some 240 or 500 or something like that, that would be a nice way to smooth out flat surfaces like that. So just a couple general filing tips. When you are filing, your wrist has a tendency, when you push forward like this, it curves a little bit like that. And it's just because of the way your arm's elbow joint works, I think. And so in order to get a nice flat surface on something, you need to kind of control that natural curve on your arm. And a couple of things I do that helps, I think, is I put my finger on the back of the file like this to kind of stabilize it. I make sure this is held or braced really in a good spot. And I don't push very hard. I let the file do all the work, okay? And finally, I'm kind of visualizing a line. And when I get to the end of the stroke like that, I don't do the normal follow through. People have a tendency to kind of, I almost just poked my computer. They kind of follow through like that, and that's where the curve on your end happens most of the time. So when you get to the end of the stroke, if you stop, pull it straight out, I get a much flatter edge much more quickly that way. You know, if you have a tendency to get curves like that on the ends of things, that's because you're doing that follow through usually. Or you're not holding this piece steady enough. That sometimes causes that as well. So, but again, if you use a light touch, you don't have to use a lot of pressure to keep it in place. So that's another situation that helps with a nice sharp file, because it'll just kind of glide right along there. Make a nice clean edge like that. So I think that's about all I have to say about files today. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that I could have talked about that I just haven't thought of. If you have some suggestions, tell me in the comments. I also love to hear your tricks on filing. How do you get a nice clean surface? How do you get into tight places with files? Are you one of the people who uses sandpaper on your pieces? What kinds of things do you do to smooth out surfaces on your pieces? I'm curious. So, all right, well, that was my most recent video about files. I hope that you learned something useful or found a tip that might be handy for you. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And I'd love it if you'd take a moment and go to my main channel page. I have 460 plus videos now. I've been doing this for 3 years on YouTube. At 3 videos per week, which is what I do, it adds up pretty quickly, so there's a ton of content there. There's a lot of projects, there's a lot of advice videos, there's also some technique videos, and there's, you know, beginner, intermediate, advanced types of projects as well. So check it out, watch some videos, subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. And don't forget to hit the video description for some important links. There's a link to my merch store if you want to get yourself a nice design idea book. Don't forget there's a sale this week if you're watching this right after it's released. There's also a link to my ebook, my latest one, the 2024 one, which is a guide to all of last year's tutorials. It's a great resource to have a whole bunch of projects right at your fingertips, and a great way to support my channel if you're interested. There's also a link to Patreon if you want to check that out. And I'm going to include a link to Pepe Tools since I talked about one of their products, and I have an affiliate link in the video description that you can follow to get there as well. So get yourself some of those nice finger protectors. I find those invaluable anymore. So, all right, well, thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.